But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nicole Sorgini. She is the Director of Marketing and Public Relations at Compass Management Partners. She is pretty much the expert that I know on all sorts of social media. I follow her on Twitter. She has a lot of really interesting, not just marketing and PR things, but maybe technology and social media things in general. So without further ado, Nicole Sorgini.
Hi. Thank you. What I had passed out in front of you are just a couple of slides from the presentation, some of the more wordier ones I figured you might want to see. And I also included a few slides for you to take notes, because I know I always like to doodle or to take some real notes during the presentation. So feel free to mark those up as you wish. And then after the presentation, I'm going to put the PowerPoint up on SlideShare and on my blog. So you can go on and get that and download it if you think it's awesome and you really want to read it. So I figured I would start out, can you give him one? I figured I would start out telling you more about myself. I graduated from George Washington University, so don't hold that against me. I study in journalism and mass communications, and I currently serve as the Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Compass Management Partners. We have 12 clients that we work with. We're a small business consulting firm. We have 3 more that we're about to bring into the fold, and the industries that we work with vary. We have a wholesale ribbon company, an oncologist, a high-end boutique, an electronic retailer, so a lot of different, buckets have my hands in. But basically, my main experience and my knowledge is really in social media. I started with social media when I worked for the Smithsonian American Art Museum. I worked in their new media department, and that was the first time I was really introduced to using social media and Web 2.0 for businesses and organizations rather than just personal consumption with your own blog or Facebooking your friends all the time. Then after that, I went on to develop the policy and program for social media for the Public Affairs Office for Headquarters, United States Army Europe in Germany. After that, I worked for a nonprofit where I worked with social media for them as well, and I also helped them with fundraising outreach. And then my most recent experience with social media, besides from the little bit I get to dabble with right now, was with the United States Marine Corps, where I developed their policy and their program for not only their social media program, but for regular Marines surfing the web, telling them what they were allowed to do and what they couldn't post. So that's really me in a nutshell for my professional life. On a personal level, I like what pretty much everyone else likes. I like root for the Phillies. I like to read. Apparently, I think I can draw, which you'll see throughout this presentation, because I figured I would try and avoid PowerPoint death, because I experienced a lot of that working for the government. So you'll see a lot of doodles that I thought were funny. Hopefully you think so too. If we can just pretend that I'm a good artist, that'll be good. So basically, before I started, I wanted to also ask you kind of your experience with social media. So really quick, if you can raise your hands, how many of you use Facebook in your daily lives? Okay, I figured that would be the case. How many of you use Twitter? What? How many of you use LinkedIn? All right, good. How many of you read blogs, any type of blog? All right, and just kind of shout it out, what kind of blogs do you read? Anyone? I read Perez Hilton. Want to throw it out there? Okay, very nice. Anyone else want to share? Okay. All right, so some of you, I might confuse you at some point during the PowerPoint, so if I'm really just talking alien language and you don't understand what I'm saying, raise your hand, I'll stop, I'll answer any of your questions. But you'll see that I do have some question slides throughout the presentation, and they come at the end of each section. So once I get to the end, you'll see the question slide, we'll stop, we'll discuss anything from the previous slides, and kind of go over any other points that you want to bring up. But again, stop me if I confuse you, because I might. All right, so does that sound good, everyone? All right. I'm here to talk to you, obviously, about human resources and social media. Social media has been a buzzword really since 2007 is when it started showing up in the media. You started hearing more about it, and by now it's impossible to ignore. It's something that people like to call the online renaissance, and throughout this period, social media has really been a territory where only marketers or public relations personnel got to dabble. But that doesn't really make sense because HR controls a company's brand as well. If you make a bad hire, your decision impacts the bottom line. So one thing I wanted to cover in this presentation was ways that you can use social media to incorporate it into your recruitment, your engagement, and any other job function that you might have to do when you go out into the working world. And I wanted to first begin by letting you in on a little secret. Could you give her in the package? Before I came here, I have a lot of HR managers and professionals that I talk with on Twitter, or I talk with on LinkedIn or Facebook, and I ask them kind of a couple basic questions. Where do you think the industry is now? What do you think that up-and-coming HR pros need to focus on? How do you think you can incorporate social media? And they gave me a lot of different feedback, and they told me, oh, you need to communicate better with top-level executives. You need to make sure that your candidates are actually telling the truth instead of lying to you when you do social recruiting. But one thing they did tell me was that a lot of employees don't like you. A lot of them don't understand what you do, and they don't think you understand their needs or that you're listening. And social media can be a great tool for you to communicate with your employees that you are listening, that you respect them, and that you know what's going on in your company as well. So this kind of theory that employees have, that you don't appreciate them, tends to go around in social media. One example is of a teacher that taught in Georgia in 2009 named Ashley Payne. And so Ashley, she had just started her new job, and during the spring break, she went on a trip to Europe. She went to Dublin, she went to the Guinness Brewery, she took some pictures of her drinking some beer, and the catch was that she had also friended some of her fellow teachers on Facebook. And when they saw it, they didn't agree with what she was posting, even though her Facebook was private. They let the principal know. When the principal found out, he decided that she either had to resign or she would get suspended. And since then, she went on to sue the school district because she said that she was never given her rights. And this is a prime example of why HR can no longer afford to remain outside of the discussion. It's time HR pros educate themselves about how to communicate effectively on digital communications platforms. Otherwise, the dialogue will remain the same. Employees will think you don't know what's going on. They'll think that you don't care. So it's time for you to get involved so you can kind of erase that stigma. All right, the next one. My little doodle. So obviously, you all are interested in HR. You know what your job role is, but I just kind of wanted to go over that again. So this is a little quote that I like. The role of human resources professional must parallel the needs of his or her organization. You are a strategic partner, an employee advocate, and a change mentor. In fulfilling this role, you contribute to the development of and accomplishments of your company's business plan and objectives. And this is important to keep in mind. You can go to the next one. Whenever you're performing your job duties, obviously you're going to be recruiting, you're going to be communicating with employees, you're going to be appraising their performance, you'll even train and mentor them. And social media and Web 2.0, they can help in every single role that you have as an HR professional. So what Web 2.0 and social media can do for you, just a couple examples, is you'll attract more talented candidates, you'll experience lower turnover, you'll improve employee morale, you'll increase the efficiency of your interview process, you'll get rid of wasting time on applicants that you normally do waste your time on, and you'll save your company time and money by keeping them out of legal battles. All right, so social recruiting is the first thing I wanted to go over. It's not just about using your website, posting ads in a newspaper, or trade publications, or even posting on job boards. Employees in their job search identify the companies that they most want to work for, and then they go out onto the internet and they find whatever information they can to learn about you. Sometimes they'll ask friends, sometimes they'll even ask random strangers. I've gotten requests on LinkedIn, oh, can you tell me about the nonprofit you worked for? Okay, sure, I'll tell you how my experience went. So social recruiting is about getting engaged and having conversations with people before they're even thinking of you as an employer. And one way to think about it is your brand, or your company is your brand, and the available job is the product that you're offering. More and more professionals are using social channels to find qualified candidates who can look good beyond their resume. Through interacting on social channels, they can gauge a candidate's interest, their expertise, how they interact on social and professional networks, and even their integrity. The thing to keep in mind is that social recruiting is more than just using social media. One day, maybe, Facebook might topple, LinkedIn might be replaced by a more efficient network. So the key is to blend together the concept of being social with all the characteristics of digital and social media. This kind of combined new thing that you're trying to tame is a creative convergence of digital arts, technology, and business for human expression, communication, social interaction, and education. All right, so these are just some stats that I have. According to a survey done by a company called JobVites of 800 HR pros, in 2010, 90% of companies use LinkedIn to find and attract employees, 59 used Facebook, and 42 use Twitter. So people in your industry are using it, but there seems to kind of be this disconnect in how to use it, so we're going to go over that. All right, so this is just a quick little graph from the survey that they did, and two things I want to point out is that the HR professionals that answered this survey, where they planned to spend more money was on social media. Where they planned to spend less money was on posting on job boards and hiring third-party recruiting companies. You can go to the next. All right, and then this is another one. So of the companies that did recruit, 58% of them successfully hired someone from using social media. Obviously, I really think this number is going to grow in the coming years as your profession really starts to get a handle on social media and starts to define more what they're looking for from using it, but it's already been successful. All right, so where to recruit? I just threw a couple different examples up there, and I broke it into 3 categories, because a lot of people join it into one, but you might see people talking about mobile, you might see them talking about Web 2.0, you might see them talking about social networking. So I kind of broke it up for you so you understand what they're talking about. So social networking could be LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Has anyone heard of Meetup? No? Meetup is where you can plan online and out in the real world meetings for professionals. And so once someone joins the Meetup group, they'll get updates whenever you're going to hold an event. And it will go out into all of their social networks. Has anyone heard of Quora? All right, so Quora is kind of new, and the way to think about it is Yahoo Answers, but more professional. So you can follow people on Quora. So you could go and follow, I don't know, who's a really big person in the HR world? Okay, well, I like, all right, my favorite author is Neil Gaiman, so I could go on and follow him, and I could see what questions he is answering, but then I can also go and search by the questions I'm most interested in. So you could go on and search, is social media and HR compatible? And then you could see if anyone's asked that question and what they've answered. So this is really the place for professionals to be, and they share a lot of information about jobs and best practices and things like that. So it's a great place to really get kind of a feel of what your profession is doing as a whole. And some people even post their jobs on Craigslist. And then Web 2.0 would be your web portals on your career sites. Any wikis? Does anyone know what a wiki is? All right, so a wiki is basically, think of Wikipedia, but for your company. Anyone can go on and talk about a topic. They can post, they can edit documents on there, and it's really for groups to communicate on pressing topics. So you might see one about HTML, and you could go on there and see what everyone's talking about the latest HTML tricks and fixes and tips and things like that. And then job listing sites. So Indeed, Simply Hired, Monster. And then where mobile comes into play are apps, SMS, which is texting, mobile websites, and mobile ads. And really, the best campaign will recruit in each category, and where you choose to recruit on social networks depends on the type of job you are hiring for. One example, there's this woman named Debbie Fisher, an HR manager for an ad agency named Campbell Mithun, found that using Twitter worked for her for when she was hiring summer interns. Summer interns, they're new to the job world, they don't mind talking about their job hunt. More experienced professionals, they might not want to put it out there. So she found that if she wanted to look for a mid-manager or something like that, that she would use LinkedIn instead. So it really depends on the type of job and where you want to concentrate your efforts. But normally if you hit one out of all those categories, or one in each of those categories, you'll have a really good working social media program. So candidates that you can find will be mid-managers, senior managers, and entry-level candidates. All right, so why it works. This is about social media. So social networking allows you to reach out directly to passive and active candidates. And what's great about social media is that if you have a Facebook, a Twitter, a LinkedIn, you can really highlight the best parts about your company. And right now, even though there's a recession and people are out of work, a lot of people are out of work, there's still this search for really good candidates, and there's a lot of competition out there between the really top-level candidates. So using sites like this gives you a really creative way to reach out to those candidates and give them extra incentive to look at your company. And also another great thing about social media is that you're involved in the conversations, that you can't control it, but you can give positive reinforcement. You can guide the conversation to what you think job hunters should know about your company. All right, so Web 2.0, Web 2.0, the main 2 points are that job seekers want concise information in one central place, and then they also want you to make it really easy for them to apply. So that's why job sites like Monster work, because job seekers can save their information, so no matter where they're applying, they don't have to keep retyping it. Mobile works because it's simple. It's where everyone is. Mobile consumption is rapidly increasing in terms of e-commerce and even just surfing the web. And it might seem counterintuitive, but a lot of companies have mobile websites, especially if they're major brands, but their career section isn't mobile. You can't go on and learn about the job. You can't even apply for it. And that's something that people are looking for in the future, because they might get the inspiration to apply for you at any moment. They might see your ad on the TV. They might see it when they're surfing on their friend's newsfeed, when they're sitting on the bus on their phone. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to apply for one of your jobs. All right, so some different ways of how to engage when you're doing social recruiting. There's a lot of different examples on here. The first one, post jobs on your account and on community boards or ads. Something to keep in mind with this is that if you're not posting on your own account, but on a community board or using an ad, that it does cost money. LinkedIn, each job posting costs $195, and it's available for only 30 days. You can get bulk discounts, but only if you're a really major corporate brand. But one great thing about LinkedIn is it does cost a good amount of change, but you can share it on all your social networks once it's posted. So anyone can go on and see that, and there's unlimited sharing ability. Facebook, if you choose an ad, it's actually one of the cheaper versions. You have two options, cost per click and cost per impression. Cost per click means that someone sees your ad, they actually click on it. The minimum bid for that is 1 cent. So you can control how much you want to spend per day, $5, $10, 20 cents. Cost per impression tends to be more costly because it means that when you log onto Facebook and you see the right column of your Facebook feed and you see those ads, you're getting charged every time someone sees it. They don't have to click on it, it's just if they see it. And that bid starts at 2 cents. You can, however, post jobs for free on Facebook Marketplace. And Craigslist, like I mentioned earlier, is used for posting jobs. The fee per posting varies by city. It's $10 for New York, $25 for cities like Philadelphia and DC, $75 for a city like San Francisco. But again, if you have your own account, you can post them for free. Some other examples that I give are you can hold live stream job chats, you can answer questions about your company, tell people how to apply, what your employees are up to. You can have a mobile app for job postings. You can host online or on and offline networking events. Some companies do this where they might have a networking event, but a lot of people can't attend. So what they'll do is they'll live stream the event, have a message board attached to the live stream where people that couldn't attend could go on and meet one another. So you still have people meeting online and in person. You can have testimonials from your employees. You can have a blog. A lot of people have a company blog. And one great thing that tends to work well in social media is that you can share when someone is hired. So each time you hire a new employee, you can give a little bio about them. You can even write up a blog post about what they plan to do for the company. So one thing for number 8 that I wanted to bring up is giving potential candidates tips on what you expect in an interview, on their resumes, things like that will make interviews more bearable for you. But then it will also spread some goodwill for your company, because even if you don't hire them, maybe they'll be so impressed that you gave them some tips that they'll pass it on to other people and say that they really liked how you engaged with them online. So I wanted to share some examples of companies doing this right now. This is an example of Google's LinkedIn page. They actually have a whole section of the Google website called Life at Google, which is their career section. And every place that they're on social media for HR is titled Life at Google. So this is how they reach out on LinkedIn. They have their recruiting videos, they list employee benefits, they post all of their jobs, so you can go on and learn a lot about them that way. And LinkedIn, you can follow companies. So even if you don't work there and you're a job hunter, you can follow the company to see when new job postings come up. This is an example of MTV Network's Jobs Twitter. So what MTV does is they go on and they add a little spunky personality to each of their tweets, but they're really just tweeting out their job postings. And Twitter can be powerful for big companies like MTV or small companies, or even if you're a lone recruiter. It really helps you get an edge over the competition, especially if you decide to take a more quirky approach to it and really show your personality or the personality of your company. And that's a way to make you stand out. Another way that you can stand out on Twitter is using hashtags. Now, I know only one of you uses Twitter, so does anyone know what a hashtag is? All right, so a hashtag, you'll see when people post a Twitter update, it has a number symbol, or the pound sign, or the number symbol in front of a word. So one that recruiters use is Hire Friday. And it's the whole word, so it starts with the pound symbol, Hire Friday, no spaces, and that actually acts as a link on Twitter, so anyone that uses that hashtag can click Hire Friday and see the whole stream of people posting using that hashtag. And so there's a movement on Twitter right now for Hire Friday. Every Friday you post new jobs and you try and connect with people interested in your company. Another one is NAJ, Need a Job. Another one is hiring. You'll see some other funny ones out there like winning. I tend to make up my own really long ones that no one follows, but it makes me happy, so I do it. All right, the next example is Google again, and this is our Facebook page. And you'll see things like they talk about their eco offices. They show some of their team meetings. They live stream it. They still post jobs on this too, but it's more about creating a narrative on Facebook. And this is Microsoft's YouTube channel. So it's called Working at Microsoft, and that's how their HR department labels all of their social media outreach. And you'll see some funny things on there. They have a My Life as an Intern video series. So they're interested in connecting with interns so that way one day they can make internal hires. And this is, earlier I mentioned mobile, and I talked about apps. So Starbucks, they figured out that a lot of their employees obviously are baristas, and they tend to be the younger kids, they tend to be the kids in college, and Starbucks already had a huge community on Facebook. They have something like 25 million people following them on Facebook. So they decided, since a lot of young people are already following them on Facebook, that they would just add a job section to their Facebook page. And they went a step further and created a mobile app. So you can download the mobile app and see whenever there's a new coffee house job opening. And then this is Web 2.0, your career portal. And this is Pixar's version of it. And one reason why this really stands out is they really try and give you a picture of what it would be like working for their company. They throw a little creativity in there. You know, we are looking to expand our pit crew. And throughout the whole entire site, you'll see testimonials from their workers. You can see videos from their workers as well. And everyone's talking about the energy and the work environment there and how creative it is. So that's one thing that they really like to focus on. And they do all that through their career portal. All right, so questions. Anyone? Don't be shy. No questions? We're good? All right, we're going to keep going. Ben? All right, so one thing to keep in mind when you are embarking on using social recruiting is what job seekers want. Especially because news, like I said, travels really fast on social media. So any snafus that come up, anytime that you have a disgruntled customer or job candidate, it's going to travel. So you need to keep in mind respect, use some common courtesy. Make sure that you extend the same common courtesy to all of your job applicants. If maybe 5 people are asking about the same job and you only reply to one of their questions, that actually might make people mad. So you want to make sure that you reply to everyone's questions, even if sometimes it might be a little repetitive, you still want to reply to them. Another thing is time. Don't waste their time. Like I said, they want an easy, quick process. So always make sure whenever you change your career portal, whenever you upload a new image or a new video, that it's working properly, because that's the biggest turnoff in social media. All right, so another way that you can incorporate social media is through employee engagement. I just want to give you an example. It's sort of dated, but it's still pretty relevant. The UK in 2009 did a huge study on a lot of their companies reaching back from 2004, so it was from 2004 to 2009. And it was a lot of the companies that were their contractors, and they wanted to see what employee engagement could do for those companies, if it could help them grow. And one example that they gave was of the VT Group, which is their leading defense and support service company. The company pulls in about $1.6 billion, if you translate it to US dollars. And historically, they were a shipbuilder. And during the time of this research that they did, they decided to switch over and become an engineering-based support service group. So they are no longer making ships. And what they did was they wanted to really ensure that this strategic move was passed down from the senior management to every single employee in their corporation. And they did this through using human resources and through using the human resources team to reach out to these employees and to engage them in conversations, to get their feedback throughout the whole process. And it definitely helped their bottom line, but one thing that they saw was that driving the conversation and making it part of their company value led to improved team working, mutual support in the workplace, greater personal responsibility by each employee, autonomy for each employee, collaboration, and greater innovation throughout their work. So they might have switched what they were doing, but because they used employee engagement, they really reached out, definitely stepped up their internal communications, definitely stepped up the feedback process. They were able to make it a smooth transition. All right, So this is just something to put up there. What, I can't hear you. So this goes back to what I said in the beginning, that a lot of employees don't know what you do, and they don't think you care. And that's because they can't hear you. You need to make yourself stand out in your organization. All right, so why should you care, if that example didn't help enough? During the recession, there were a lot of people getting laid off. They took pay cuts. A lot of their friends were fired. So employee morale is definitely low. And during hard economic times, employee morale definitely drops so low as well. 54% of employees plan on looking for new jobs once the economy gets better. And the company that did this was called HR Solutions. And part of their survey, they also found out that in 2010, of the employees that they talked to, only 20% of employees felt that they were actively engaged. 60% said they felt ambivalent, and 13% said they were actively disengaged. So employee engagement is at an all-time low. People are looking for someone to step up and to say, okay, this is what the management's doing, we're here for you, and we want to communicate with you. All right, so ways you can engage using Web 2.0 and social media. These are just a couple different examples. So for internal communications, you can use Web 2.0 and social media to step that up. One way is through direct emails, through Constant Contact or MailChimp. What's great about those is you can put in photos, you can put in videos, you can have links in your emails. You can build out the feel of your email. So if you're really trying to, step up competition, not so much competition, but trying to get employees to really work hard and trying to get them to innovate, you can actually build out a whole template that kind of inspires that. You can have private LinkedIn groups. You can build a Ning community. Ning is kind of like, think of a website and Facebook combined, but you can create it. So you can go onto Ning and create your own kind of web/social media site. And you can make it private to only your employees. And that's where you can put all of your updates. That's where you can put all of the letters from your top-level executives, anything you want in terms of internal communications. You can also do Google Hangouts. Now, you can't do it as a corporation because they haven't allowed corporations to join Google. It's only individuals. But if you work for a small company like I do, you could get the 3, 4, 5, 6 of you to go on to your Google Plus accounts and start a Google Hangout. And that's basically like Skype, except it includes messaging, and there's an unlimited number of people that you can invite to the Hangouts, and it's free. And then there's also group messaging like Salesforce, which is kind of like instant messaging, if you remember that from back in the day. But it allows you to also upload files and categorize all of your communications. So it makes it easier for people to kind of keep track of how the conversation is shifting. 2, you can use Web 2.0 and social media for your training and employee development. You can do it through your web portal. Something that I always had to do when I worked for the government was you log into your web portal. It's customized exactly for you. It keeps track of what training you've already participated in. And then all the training uses a lot of different multimedia techniques. You log on, you can do, have you ever done the books where you get to choose your ending? So you choose the next step and it changes depending on what you chose. Those were all the training. So you kind of had to go on and say, oh, I want to try this, I want to try that. And it made it a lot more fun and a lot more bearable because we had to do hours of training. You can use Google Sites. And I don't think I pulled it up, but my company uses Google Sites, and you can make it private. It's really, really easy to use. You basically drag and drop all the functions, and you can put announcements, updates, you can attach documents, you can attach all of your Google Docs, and that's one way that we keep a track with one another. So anytime there's a major project going on, I will go up into the Google site and I will put up the announcement. Anytime something really awesome happens, I'll go and make an announcement for that too, so people can see that what we're doing is actually improving the company, which always makes it more bearable to work. And then you can have company wikis, which I brought up earlier. You can also do Twitter hashtag events. So this is something that GM did when they had their new fall interns come in. they started a hashtag event, and it said GM interns. And it was really, really flashy. They allow the interns to drive their own brand new cars around the city. And then they had a huge meeting for them to learn about GM. And the interns were encouraged to go on and tweet using the hashtag. The only thing to keep in mind with this, though, is that you cannot use them, obviously, for information that is confidential, because otherwise people can go on and see the hashtags. There's no way to make them private. So if you're putting out confidential information, you're going to get your company in trouble, and that's obviously not what you want to do. A third way you can use it is reaching out to former employees through LinkedIn groups, online networking events like I talked about earlier, Twitter lists. If you have some really great employees that left the company but you still keep track of them, you can build a Twitter list, and basically it shows up on your Twitter account. On the right-hand side, you'll see who the person's following, who is following them, and then their Twitter list. So you can make one for former employees. You can reach out through Facebook. And then this is something that we tried out when I worked at U.S. Army Europe, was class of whatever year the employee worked, because we had a lot of people when we started the Facebook account coming in, they were veterans, and they had all of these pictures of their friends when they worked over in Europe. And they said, oh, is there a way for me to add them onto your Facebook page or to your group? So what we did is we started adding them to Flickr. And then that kind of encouraged a conversation about, oh, I remember when I worked there, I did this, I got to travel to France, I met all these great new people. So other people that worked at U.S. Army Europe were able to go on and see what people had experienced 20, 40 years before, and it got them engaged in the conversation as well, so that way you never lose anyone. And then the fourth way is through incorporating all of this outreach into your external communications that you're doing for social recruiting. So a good example of this is anytime your employee does something really, really great, put it on your Facebook. Even if you're using it to reach out to recruits, that's something that might interest them as well. And that shows that employee that you're listening, you care, and you want to spread their good achievement. All right, so this is an example of a wiki. This is what IBM uses. Part of it is open to the public, and part of it is private. And this is for their development team. So anytime they're working on a new project, a new computer gadget, they'll go on there and they'll start a discussion about it. This is H&M's LinkedIn alumni outreach. They actually have a group for alumni. And it's private. You have to request to join, and then the moderator will go and accept you. And their group really works to kind of keep H&M in the employees' minds even after they've left. And it's great for H&M because now they're no longer just your employees, they're consumers too. So you kind of help them transition into working for you to buying your clothes. And that's how they use their alumni group. All right, so how to engage online. These are just a few tips. Be infectious. So to be infectious, have some spunk, have some personality, be positive, try and inspire. There's a lot of videos online that you can go see from the TED group. And so they might have had people like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg come, and other social media gurus, and they'll just lead a talk about a theory or an idea or a concept. So it's not really going into in depth to anything, but it's making you think more, and it's making you realize, okay, I can take this concept and really apply it to something else. And that's how you can be infectious. Articulate your vision. So if you're doing internal communications and you're talking for the top level executives, make it we will, not we will try. You want to be not strict. You want to be really forward with what you want. If you're trying to inspire positivity throughout your company, you want to talk this way. Adapt your style. Social media is always changing. Depending on who comes in your organization, the personality of your workforce might change as well. So make sure you're not keeping the same old stiff routine. Speak from the heart. Human connection goes a long way. Make communication a two-way street. get feedback throughout the whole process. Ask your employees to give you feedback. Speak the truth. Honesty and integrity is seen as the #1 leadership value, so you want to be honest and forthright with your employees. Also, spread positivity, because positivity goes a long way in social media. You would think that, from traditional media, that only the negative things spread, but it's actually positivity online that spreads the most. All right, so this is just a thought to ponder. If you're going to involve social media and Web 2.0 in your employee engagement, you need to make sure that that's accepted by your top-level executives. Because if you're telling your employees to get on Facebook for a conference that you're going to do on a live stream, your top-level executives have to feel comfortable with letting your employees on Facebook in the middle of the day. So you always need to make sure that if you're pushing these things, that it's going to be accepted from every level of the organization. Otherwise, it will never really take hold. All right, so questions? No? All right. All right, so policy enforcement. Before I broach this topic, I want to mention that it's kind of a big topic right now that everyone's talking about is if it's right or not to perform a social background check when recruiting. I personally see nothing wrong with it, as long as HR professionals don't overstep their boundaries and don't let the results affect their decision-making so early in the discriminatory process. Looking for someone on social networks and checking their listings on Google are perfectly acceptable. Often a check on Google can alert you to any dangers with employees. When I buy a car, I look at the safety ratings. If someone told me that safety ratings weren't made publicly available, I would worry about that car. However, I have had this, people have told me about this all the time. Recruits have been asked to give potential employers access to their Facebook or to even friend them. And that's where you step the line, because that's like asking someone, hey, you let me into your home, can I go check through all your doors and your closets, and if you have a diary, can I read it? If their Facebook is private, they want that privacy. Don't intrude on it. You have no right to ask them for their login name and their password. That's where you go too far. Now, where policy enforcement gets trickier is when they're actually your employee. Your job is to mitigate legal risk, and social media can make that trickier if you don't handle it properly. A lot of companies can find themselves in trouble if they discipline employees for their actions online, like Ashley Payne earlier, yet they don't have any explicit guidelines for employees that forbid that behavior. So the question is, if you're going to involve online behavior in the termination process, how do you ensure your actions won't result in aggravating employees suing the company? All right, you can keep going. So I'll just sum this up. This is an actual conversation that went on Facebook. The girl got on Facebook and basically called her employer a pervy wanker, and she forgot that she had actually friended her boss. So the boss went on there and he said, oh, did you forget you friended me? I'm not a pervy wanker. I'm not interested in you. I'm actually gay. And by the way, you're not done your probationary period, you're fired, don't come in tomorrow. And at first you think, oh, okay, he had the right to do that because, she was saying something really bad against him. She was calling him a pervy wanker and basically accusing him of sexual harassment. But the employer, if you read that response, you could tell that he already had something against the girl. So that's kind of, if you don't have these policies and if you don't assert that HR needs to handle any of the issues like this that come up on social media, that's where you'll get in trouble. That's where this girl could go back and say, oh, did you see his response? I think that there's reason for me to go back to the company and say I was wrongfully terminated now. All right, so how do you cover your butt? Define for employees their expectation of privacy upon hiring. This way, there is no kind of, oh, I think I'm allowed this, I don't think I'm allowed that. Define your rules for conduct online and in social media at every level of your organization, which means if you think that, top-level executives for some reason are able to say more online, have a policy for them. Have a policy for if you're Starbucks, your baristas. Have one for everyone, so that way it's very clear what's expected of each and every single employee at every level. Define confidential versus public information. Ensure everyone knows the rules. So once you create these guidelines, make sure you're putting in your internal communications. Make sure it's in the employee welcome packet. Make sure you update them on it every once in a while, like every month. Kind of send out an email and say, oh, check out the social media guidelines to make sure you're up to date. Talk about consequences and violations. A lot of people will read your guideline, but if you don't tell them what's going to come out of it, if they break it, they might not be interested. When disciplinary action is required, use your policy. Always point it back to that. And educate your employees on social media best practices. So not only how to follow your guidelines, but even just, you might not want to put out your personal information. A lot of people talk about their personal information online. They might use Foursquare, which is where you could check into Villanova, and it will actually populate that check-in on their Facebook, on their Twitter, and say where that person is. And a lot of people do that and don't think, oh wow, someone knows exactly where I am right now. If someone wanted to go into my house and happen to have my key or something like that, like they would be able to go and do that because they know that you're not at home. So that's something that you can also give to your employees as well to kind of make the guidelines more accepted. And these are just a few examples. This is one that I worked with at the Marine Corps. And this goes through how Marines can engage online. And obviously it's a little more stricter for them because they have to follow their code of conduct, and they also have to follow something called OPSEC, Operational Security, which says you can't post, it's this whole list. You can't post where you're deployed right now. If someone in your troop dies, you cannot post that they have died until their family has been informed. Things like that. They can't post that on social media networks. They can actually get disciplined for that. They can lose rank. A lot of different things can happen to them. So this is something that was given to every single Marine. It's something that they were updated on very, very frequently. This is one for BBC. What's kind of most notable about that is it strictly says you cannot say what political party you're affiliated with. If you affiliate with a political party as a journalist, you have to say that you work for the BBC. You have to let them know what your role in the organization is. So they very clearly define the certain things that you can and cannot do online. This is one for Dell, and so they tie it back to their code of conduct. So the same code of conduct in the real world is still true for anything online. So every Dell employee, if they think that they can get away with it online, they can't. All right, now those are all things that can get you in trouble, but there are some things that can actually help you mitigate risk. So one is that you can actually catch bad behavior sooner than you ever would have if social media didn't exist. In 2010, Domino's employees put up a video on YouTube of them doing some pretty nasty things to the food that was then served to customers. They had apparently been doing this for a very long time. It wasn't until they were stupid enough to put it on YouTube that Domino's found out, and then they fired them. So would Domino's have found out? I don't know. It might have been way later down the road, or they might never have known. Another thing is that some employees might not come to you when there is sexual harassment going on in the workplace. They might not come to you when they do have issues with their boss. You might run into problems where a new employee, for some reason or another, wasn't trained the same way someone else was. They weren't given the same material. They weren't told the same things. So they might not voice it in real life, but they'll do it on social media. People always vent on social media. So if you're interacting online, you'll be able to see these things, and you'll be able to go to the employees and say, okay, how can I help you? Is this actually going on? You can work with them to figure out how the company can better engage with them. All right, any questions?
If someone has an account that is sort of anonymous, not their own name, and it comes to the attention of the company that it's disruptive comments have been made or whatever, how
Okay, I actually ran into this problem when I worked for the Marine Corps. We actually had a Facebook contact that worked with us because we had a lot of Marines starting fake accounts with, they had one effing boots. They had one where they took the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps and drew a Nazi patch on his shoulder, and he was very, very, very not happy about that. And it was something that came to our attention from our Facebook followers and from Marines that were on our Facebook page. And so what we did was we were able to contact Facebook, see if they had any linked accounts. A couple of them, we actually found out that they had used the same email to register for that account as they had for their personal one. Or they might have had in their information the personal account on both places, so we're able to tie it together. And then we were kind of, based on the social media policy that we had to pass that on up the chain because we couldn't do anything about it. And it was brought to the attention of the higher-ups. But a lot of companies, you might go through that whole process, you might not be able to find out who it is. At that point, you either have to say, okay, should I let it go? If they're posting, a lot of times you can get rid of them. If they're posting things that violate Facebook's terms of agreement, Facebook will actually work with you to shut down the account. So if it's really, if they're breaking the nudity policy or they're, I think Facebook has a policy against actual hate speech, they'll shut it down for you. So you can have that venue, and it really just depends on your social media guidelines. If you say that this kind of speech is not accepted, if we find out you're an employee, these are the actions that we will take against you. Your employees, when they're hired, are given that policy. They have to sign on to it, so you would have the right to then start that disciplinary action. Anyone else? No? All right. Thank you, Billy. All right, so the last thing I have for you are just some resources for you once you're into the working world, how you can keep in touch with HR, and a great way is through social media with all the things happening in HR. So here are some HR blogs. One I want to point out is Corn on the Job. He actually graduated from the HRD department at Villanova. So you can go on and see what he's doing and see how successful you're going to be once you graduate. So, and he actually answered some of my questions. So some of the feedback in this presentation came from him. And he is a very, very good resource. He has been featured on ABC, Forbes, CNN, anyone you can think of. Another really great resource is the HR Bartender. A lot of people read her blog, and she gives really practical advice. So these are some blogs that you can go on to and keep up with the industry, see what's changing. And the next slide I have are some HR rock stars on Twitter. The first one I want to point out is Cynthia. She actually helped me with this presentation as well and answer some of my questions. She's a really great resource. She's very helpful, and she actually said that if any of you want to connect with her, that you can. So just tweet her, send her a direct message. She's on LinkedIn as well, so if you don't want to tweet her, she has her link to her LinkedIn on her Twitter page. So you can go on and ask her any questions you want, and she's a great resource for you to have. Rich runs Corn on the Blog, so you can go and talk to him as well. And if anyone's interested, he actually said he has some internship opportunities for a company that he's starting up. So if you're interested in HR and social media, that's what his company does. You can come talk to me. I'll give you his contact information, and you can get in touch with him. These are some Twitter chats and podcasts. So there's HR Happy Hour, which is a really great resource for you. You can go on and listen. I actually forget what time it is each day, but it happens usually each day. And then Twitter chats, this is something I brought up with hashtags. You see the pound symbol. So anytime you go into Twitter and you want to click Hire Friday, T-Chat, the CMGR chat, you'll click on that and you'll be able to see the live stream. And if you go on to my blog, I'll have this presentation up there and all the links will be there for you to click on, so you'll be able to see what time all of these chats go on. You can use the symbol or the hashtag anytime you want, but a lot of them only happen in a certain time during the day. So Hire Friday lasts all day. The T-Chat happens, I believe, every Wednesday at 7:30. So a lot of them have their own times, and that's when you'll be able to go on and connect with other HR managers and specialists, and you'll be able to get a lot of their knowledge and kind of apply that to your job once you leave from here. And then there are some LinkedIn groups as well for HR professionals. And one thing Cynthia told me was that you have to network. Always network, and the best way to start doing that is through LinkedIn. And then you can end up, emailing that person, Twittering them. You can even set up times to meet if they're in the Philadelphia area, and you'll be able to get a mentor that way. Because a lot of people on the LinkedIn groups like to mentor people. So if you tell them that you're a college student, you want to learn more about HR, they'll be glad to help you. These are some websites you can keep up with as well. So they have blogs, they have podcasts, they have Twitters. You'll be able to go there and see any information you want to know about social media and HR, or HR law, any of the new regulations that are going on, anything like that. And then one thing I want to leave you with is an ounce of action is worth a ton of theory. So once you become a working professional, go out there and try something. Try engaging on social media. Try setting up a policy for your company if they don't already have one. Because I guarantee you that it's going to work a lot more for your company than your inaction would. And that's something that your profession needs. They need someone to kind of take hold and say, this is where we're going with social media. This is what we can do. And this is how we'll be able to benefit with it. So that is all. Does anyone else have any other questions about anything from any point in the presentation, or any other questions on your mind about social media and HR? Feel free to ask. All right, so you'll see the last slide on the handout is all of my contact information. You can contact me at any time. If you're Twitter illiterate, which it seems like some of you are, I'll be glad to help with anything. I'll be glad to give you some other contact information for HR pros that I've talked to, or that I know. I don't think I know many in the area, but you'll be able to get in contact with them and find out some more information from them. You'll be able to download the presentation when this is over from my blog, and any other questions you have about social media, even if it doesn't pertain to HR, if you want to know the best, Twitter tool or Twitter analytics, I'll help you with that. So you have all my contact information, and I'll give you my cards too.
I'm running the USHRM Twitter and
Okay.
Facebook, and I was wondering if you have any tips for how to get the information about those social networking sites out so that we can get more followers or more likes or anything like that.
Okay. It's a little bit harder when you definitely, because I'm working a lot more with regular retail companies, things like that, where it's definitely more profit driven. But I have worked for museums and everything like that. It's a lot harder to kind of get people interested in more informational news. So one way to kind of go about it that has always worked for me is to kind of make your tweets very vague. Do it something that's kind of has some personality, but make it pretty vague so people want to click on your links. Because you'll actually find that even the Coca-Colas of the world, they have less than 10% of their followers click on their links. No one clicks on links. So you want to give them incentive to keep reading. So if you really want to kind of put a buzz out there and get more people to pay attention, just be a little silly sometimes. A lot of people are afraid, that's going to ruin the integrity of my company. On social media, you get away with some of that. One tweet I sent out from the Marine Corps was literally just surprise with 3 exclamation points. And we ended up getting something like 600 clicks on that link, which was unheard of for us because that's when we had a lot less followers. We only had about 6,000 then. And usually we had about 40 clicks on our links from all the 6,000. And then we started putting out more cryptic messages, and we saw that more people were actually clicking the links. And even though some of those links were really long articles or policy guidelines that we tried to cover up with those statuses, people actually read them, which is something you can track. And you can talk to your marketing team or your webmaster through Google Analytics. You'll be able to see from Twitter who goes and reads what parts of your website, and you'll be able to see how long they're spending on the page. So generally, if you hook them with something that's a little cryptic, they'll actually stay on your page more. So that's kind of one tip I can give. And then another is reach out to other professionals that aren't at Villanova but have a large following. There are a lot of SHRM members that are on Twitter. Cynthia is actually one of them. She's involved in SHRM. And so if you have an event that's going on that you want a lot of people to know about, they'll actually tweet it out for you. So especially if you develop that, kind of friendship with them, they'll be able to tweet that out for you. Cynthia has something like 12,000 followers on Twitter. So if she knows a lot of people in the Philadelphia area, they might come to it. That way you'll also might be able to get mentors. You could get them to give out tips on your Twitter as well. A lot of Twitter respondents or correspondents work really well on Twitter to get a different voice on there. So there's a lot of different things you can try. It's just mixing it up and adding some spunk in there.
Thank you.
No problem. Anything else? Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Hopefully I didn't have PowerPoint death for any of you. It's something I try to avoid. And again, you can contact me anytime with any questions, and I appreciate you sitting through it.